Hello, listeners. Welcome to your very first episode of the TheGeoScholar Podcast. This is the TheGeoScholar. This podcast is based around the same mission as my YouTube channel, The TheGeoScholar. It is all about geography. It is about the things that are on this earth, geography being a big part of our world. And today's episode will be about California fighting the Nutria rat. Now, when many people think about Nutria rats, many will think about Louisiana, and for good reason, because Louisiana is famous for having them, and Louisiana is famous because it's also part of the cuisine. Not only is it considered a pest over there, it's being hunted, people eat it, it's part of the cuisine, but California has also been dealing with the Nutria rat as well. To understand why this is such a big deal, you have to understand one particular term, invasive species. An invasive species is any plant or animal species that is not native to the place that it's being introduced to. And in the case of the Nutria rat, it is an invasive species. And last year, in 2018, it started turning up in California. This is not the first time California has had to fight the Nutria rat. The Nutria rat was introduced to California back during the late 19th century. It was brought there for the fur industry, and right around the time the fur industry started collapsing towards the 1940s, what happened is many of the Nutria rats started being released. And one thing about California being such a geographically diverse state with so many different landforms, the Nutria rats found themselves a very perfect home in the wetlands of the Central Valley of California, particularly around the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta. And, that area having a lot of wetlands, it was perfect for the Nutria rat. To understand the Nutria rat, understand the biogeography, its native range, it is called the coipu. The coipu is actually native to South America, particularly around the Pantanal region, around places like Paraguay, Brazil, Argentina. That is where you typically find the coipu. That's where it's native to. And the reason it is an invasive species is because of the damage that it has done. In the state of Louisiana, when it was introduced there, it was brought there for the same reason, the fur industry. And then Nutria rats were being not introduced, they were being released into the swamps, or they escaped, and they caused so many matters of damage. They destroyed hundreds of thousands of acres of wetlands in Louisiana, and this is how they destroy wetlands. See, one thing about the Nutria rat, the plants, it's part of its diet. And one thing that it does is it will eat the roots of plants. And with eating the roots of those plants, obviously that causes a lot of destruction to the wildlife. Well, not why. It does a lot of destruction to the swamps and the marshes. And in that destruction, it turns those marshes and swamps back into open water. That's what it does to the swamps and marshes and wetlands. And then there's more. In California's case, it's causing a particular type of destruction because of it's going in and it's burrowing in these levees. Because when you have areas like wetlands, or when you have the Central Valley of California where you have a lot of irrigation canals and where you have a lot of cases where you have to prevent flooding, obviously things like levees are going to be very important. And one thing that the Nutria rat does, it burrows into those levees. And when it burrows into those levees, it causes a lot of destruction that way, because it will collapse the levees by burrowing into them. And this is going to cause a lot of problems for flood control. And it's going to cause a lot of problems for farming, because the Central Valley is a major farming region. You have so many fruits and vegetables produced in the Central Valley of California. You have things like oranges, almonds, you have tomatoes, you even have rice produced in parts of the Central Valley of California. You have so many different fruits and vegetables being produced in the Central Valley, and agriculture being important. You want to make sure that you protect that. And the Nutria rat is going to cause a lot of damage because it's going to cause problems with the canals and the irrigation systems in California. And one thing that is being done, the state of California Department of Fish and Wildlife has been given $10 million to fight this environmental issue. And one of the things that has been done, the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta Conservancy has gone on, and they've gone on a program to eradicate the Nutria rat from California once again. It eradicated it before. The Nutria rat was eradicated from California before. It was. But it's showing back up again. And one thing to consider, Nutria rats do very well in water. That's their natural habitat. Nutria rats are a lot like beavers. They even look similar to beavers with a difference. Beavers tend to have those big, fat, flat tails, a lot like paddles, whereas Nutria rat have smaller tails. And here's a big difference. Those trademark orange teeth that the Nutria rat has, that is one big way to tell that that's a Nutria rat. But off topic here, the Nutria rat, one of the things about it, it's very good in water. It loves the water, and one of the things that is going on, and one of the reasons that it's spread throughout the southeast United States of America, is through the rivers and wetlands. The United States of America has the Great Continental Divide. That is where you have rivers going down both sides of the mountains. Rivers starting up in the Rocky Mountains will often flow from the mountains, and then it'll flow to either the Gulf of Mexico, or they'll flow into the Pacific Ocean. What you have with, take for instance, you have the Missouri River, which starts up in the mountains of Montana, and it flows through South Dakota, Nebraska, Missouri, and then it meets up in St. Louis with the Mississippi River, and then the Mississippi River obviously empties into the state of Louisiana. But, that's the Continental Divide for you. So obviously, those Nutria rat, the rivers and streams and swamps are like highways for them. California, all the rivers that are in California, they're going to lead to the Pacific Ocean. It's not like those Nutria rat can easily go across the Rockies like that. It's not going to happen because, number one, the habitats that you have to cross just, for the Nutria rat, it's not worth it. So that Nutria rat had to have gotten there somehow. Somebody had to have put it there. It had to have been reintroduced there somehow. Because if you were to look at the geography of the United States of America, and you consider the Great Continental Divide, and then you consider the habitat that the Nutria rat does well in. It does well in areas that are warm. It does well in areas that are wetlands. And it's going to do well in places like Louisiana, Florida, Texas, Georgia. But if it were to try to travel further west towards New Mexico and Colorado, it's not going to make it, because it's going to be a lot drier, and especially in the case for the mountains in New Mexico and Colorado, it's going to be quite cold. And that's one of the reasons why it leaves a lot to wonder, how did those Nutria rats get into California after years being eradicated? Then you also have to think about why the Nutria rat thrives, because you're talking about an environment where there are no natural enemies, and there's plenty of habitat available. And so obviously it's going to be a prolific breeder. It's going to keep reproducing. And so you have to look at a lot of factors like biogeography, your ecology, your habitat, and just where it's native to and also where it's not native to. Hence why invasive species, it is a concept that is very important in geography, because you need to understand geography in order to understand the concept of invasive species, because you have a situation where you have an animal or a plant that is not native to a particular place, but it's outcompeting other species in that area, because the things that would make it a little harder for it to survive in its own home range, it isn't as difficult where it's being introduced, because where it's being introduced, it's a similar environment, but different as well. You've got the Nutria rat. It's got to compete with other animals in the Pantanal region, and then it has enemies. Think about it. You got an area where there are jaguars that could eat it, but then you take that same animal, put it in California, where it has very few enemies, no natural enemies there, and it had you don't have a whole lot of cold weather in areas where it's being introduced. So it's not like where you got mild winters, hot summers, and plenty of wetlands in Central Valley for the Nutria rat to thrive in. And now you also have to think about what's being done to eradicate it. These are some of the steps that are being taken to eradicate it. Hunting is one major step, and one of the things that is being tried is taking a sterilized Nutria rat and sort of putting like a radio collar on it. And what that sterilized Nutria rat will do is lead it to other Nutria rats, and it help hunters find more Nutria rats to hunt, trap, and kill them. And then obviously you have a lot of trapping of Nutria rats, because within the last year, they've, about 600 Nutria rats have been trapped so far. They've either been trapped or they've been killed. And then another way that Nutria rats have been dealt with is dogs. Dogs are used to detect those Nutria rats so they can find them, trap them, and kill them. And this is just one way in which people are trying to solve environmental problems. We think about environmental problems, we think about water pollution, we think about air pollution and deforestation, and as well you should. You should, because those are big problems. In many cases, it's also about what kind of animals you introduce to a certain area. You have to be very cognizant about, should we introduce this particular species to this area? What are its natural enemies? How much can it thrive here? And will it outcompete, out-eat, and hurt other species in this area? And those are questions that have to be asked. There are no easy answers, just smart solutions, and that's one of the things that is important in terms of studying geography, in terms of studying invasive species, especially when it comes to the Nutria rat eradication process going on in California. If you like this podcast, there will be more episodes of the TheGeoScholar Podcast. Be sure to check out my channel, The TheGeoScholar, for more videos. And till next time, learn as much as you can about geography.